Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Adam Tandez. We're here with another episode of the All Day, Everyday Hoops podcast. Before we get started with our guest today, I just wanted to plug a couple things. First is the Be Contagious Leadership Experience by Hernando Planels. Hernando Planels was a college basketball coach, leadership entrepreneur, former sports film choreographer. Everyone is trying to get better when leading their team, employees, and themselves. The BCLE gives people an inside view on leadership from the coaches and thought leaders' perspective. Be great, be the light, and be contagious. Find out more at www.hernandoplanels.com. He's currently in season 2 of his podcast. Got to make sure you listen to those and subscribe. Also, coaches of women's and girls basketball, the WBCA is your community. Since 1981, the Women's Basketball Coaches Association has been there advocating for our sport and supporting coaches at every level. They have amazing in-person educational opportunities like the WBCA convention, which is held in conjunction with the NCAA Women's Final Four, and regional coaches classroom clinics. They have e-learning through their monthly webinar series, as well as over 700 videos, plays, and drills on their website, wbca.org. Along with information, they are the place you go to expand your network. The Coach-to-Coach mentoring program connects members throughout the season, and their in-person Mentoring Madness sessions put you next to other experienced head and assistant coaches that can give you instant feedback and help you meet whatever challenges you might be facing. The WBCA is there to give you all the tools you need to be your best. Learn more today at www.wbca.org. and become a part of this premier coaching association. All right, folks, hope you enjoy our next guest. I most certainly did. Please make sure you log onto iTunes, like and subscribe to our podcast, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where we've got both these interviews as well as different drills and different other videos that we put up periodically. All right, enjoy the show. What's up, everybody? This is Adam Tandez with the All Day, Everyday Hoops podcast. It is a pleasure today to have one of my great friends. We're just talking, I've known him for 9-10 years now. The head coach, the all-time winningest head coach in Loras College women's basketball history, Justin Heinzen. Justin, how are you doing today?
Good, Adam. Pleasure to be on. I appreciate it. Give this a go and see what happens. Hopefully we can give something to the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is, people don't need to know this, but this is round 2. I fumbled that the last time. But I know your time is valuable and you've got some other stuff going on today, so we're going to jump right into it. First of all, congratulations on your incredible season that unfortunately was cut short. You guys were 25-4. You had a couple All-Americans. Some people in multiple All-American honors and different publications. It sounds silly, but my first question is what went right this year for you guys to be in the position you're in and closing in on a potential Elite 8 opportunity? Tell me about this team and what you guys did well.
Yeah, we came together really, really well. I think we progressed tremendously well throughout the course of the year, but the biggest thing was we returned a ton from the year before and got bounced in the first round of the tournament, but had really good experience. And talent-wise, 1 through 5 on the floor, we were really, really good, but we just needed that experience. And not that we needed to lose that game last year to DePaul in the first round of the tournament. We got smacked, but it was a good test for us. It was really good experience for us, and I think when you mold the experience and the talent together, that's what this team found out was really beneficial. And I think that was the biggest thing, just the experience of the stage we were on, the high level games night in and night out that we challenged ourselves with. It was funny because we met with them in the preseason to go over what they want from our schedule, and they all wanted to play 9 top 25 games and go get it from the get-go. And they did that, and they met every challenge, and that was a fun ride for sure.
Awesome. So when you guys lose to DePaul and you're setting up for that postseason and into the summer, what are some of the things, obviously I trust, the way you run your teams, that they were probably motivated and chomping at the bit to get after it. What are some of the things you put in place going into the off season? And for those who don't know, Division III, obviously you're not with them at all. What are some of the things you guys put in place to kind of put the best foot forward for this season?
Yeah, and to answer that question, I think it goes back a couple of years, because the year before last, we lost 7 seniors, and nobody really expected Loras to be great. And we had a great run that year with, I forget, our 22-6 maybe, or 24-6 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody expected that, but we put a ton of time into our identity and our culture, way more than our basketball. I mean, we were still practicing the normal amount, but we spent a lot more time on, I guess, our chemistry and our togetherness. And so then last year's team, seeing the result of that, knew that if we combined and kept that rolling the way we had, with the talent we had returning, I think everybody expected to be in a really good place, and they were. And credit to them, though, you still got to show up every day and do the work. But it started with culture from 2 years ago, and then take that on to getting smoked in the first round 1 year ago. Like, all those things really added up in a big way for us, and just learning environments. We ended the DePaul game saying we got to close the gap, and I think that was enough motivation for the off season. Like, everybody knew what we had coming back, the pieces we had, the chemistry we had, the culture we had, and it was just close the gap from basketball, and they did that.
So obviously, when you said the basketball, obviously you're still, I'm sure, maxing out your 20 hours that the NCAA gives us. What then are you guys doing or making concerted efforts in to improve, as you said, chemistry and togetherness? Let's start there.
Yeah. So one of the great things we've done, and none of this we've ever made up. It's all stolen from other people, right? But in the preseason, we let them lead. I've stolen
a lot from you, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. In the preseason, we let them lead what we call Mental Health Mondays, and it's just a way for our team to grow and get closer together in a really, really vulnerable state. And coaches aren't even involved in that. It's just player-led, but that's where the team has to grow the most, is just their bond with each other. So we let them do the preseason. We organize like a theme, but they do all of the presentations. It's from Dabo Sweeney's Safe Seat, it's called. And we put everybody on the safe seat, or they do, and really get down to like who I am, what motivates me, and maybe 1 or 2 things along the way that have inspired my journey or inspired me or shaped me into the person I am. And I don't sit in on those meetings, and nor does any of my staff, but in just hearing reports, and we don't get a ton of them, but I mean, there's tears 24/7 and people getting real with each other. But what comes out of it is a willingness to fight for each other a little bit more, because you know what your teammates are going through or have been through, or why they operate the way they do. So now they have their why, right? And everybody wants, you want people to have your back and to fight for each other. But if you have your why, you can take that a little bit further. So that's been great for us. And then just continuing to cultivate that once season starts, and not just having it be a one and done thing, is super important. So making sure that our Mental Health Mondays are still on track, and we're still doing some of that stuff in season to keep on growing as a group, and being vulnerable with each other in it too. Like, all of us are human. We're all going to screw it up at some point. Expecting that, in a way, and being real with each other that way. So that's been huge for us, just in terms of the off the floor stuff and understanding our why.
Okay. No, I love it. Just educate me a little bit more. We've talked about this in the past, but so the safe seat method that you're saying Clemson football uses, kind of, I know you're not sitting in there, but what is that really? So kids are literally going up like in the front of the team room or the locker room, and and kind of just saying whatever they want? What's the forum? What's the environment like for that?
Yeah. So one of our seniors a couple of years ago went to one of the inclusion forums for the NCAA and brought back a list of like conversation starters for that kind of setting. And then it sort of branched out from there. And a lot of it has to do with like simple, small stuff early on, like family life. Tell me about your family life and defining moments you've had there. Tell me about your heroes. And if you have somebody you play for, who is that? And then it gets into some mental health things, or it gets into some just challenges people have. And it's not geared at, all right, let's break people down. But it's more geared to let's grow. And so we go 6 different weeks, 6 different themes. They pick the themes. I only knew 2 of the weeks this year as far as like what the programming was. Our upperclassmen like lead it in a way where it's like they're usually the first ones to go, because it's often harder as an underclassman just to jump right in.
Right.
And there's a little waiting game for them to jump in, but they pick the themes every year on what's going to be important to them, things that are on the radar, and they really run with it.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, yeah. I kind of want to go even a little bit further with this. Like you've mentioned just the past couple years, and obviously the strength in these past couple seasons, and what the DePaul loss did for you. But obviously you've been there. This was your 13th season, and you've won the league. What was it, 13, 14? You've going way back. You've had good teams. So kind of, what have you been able to piece together as a coach that has carried over? What are some of those things? And I'd love to get into what are some of the things that maybe you were hoping would stick when you first got there culturally and in terms of togetherness, but then maybe hasn't, and what you've learned from kind of the forks in the road with those things.
Yeah, this is it's a journey for sure. I don't know if we've arrived at that at all, but so we started my first year in 2007, and we had 8 players on the team, and really had just to find a way to try to compete. And it wasn't broke. Like we had really, really talented pieces in that first year's group, and competed, and like we needed to get deeper. We needed to get better as a basketball program. So that first couple of years was just recruiting that, just to stabilize a little bit. And then going into, so in 13-14, we won our first championship. 4 years before that, we shifted because we had to stabilize the program a little bit. So in 9-10, our recruiting process was, let's just get people now instead of players. And we focused a lot on that. Players are, the skill set's important, but we made sure we had the right people. And it was kind of a blind faith in where we were going that we didn't know was going to pay off the way it did until we won the championship that year. And I remember vividly the locker room at the NCAA tournament. We were super injured that year, got healthy mid-season, and then ran the table. But our overall resume, because of that, wasn't great. I think we were 19-9, but we lost 7 games out of the gates. And then got healthy and were really, really good. And so we were the slaughtered lamb in the tournament. We played the number 1 seed, St. Thomas, and actually had them beat and should have won. Lost in a 3-point game at their place, and it kind of validated what we were doing, that it was working, and kind of look around the locker room at the end of that game saying, this is going to go somewhere, and this is just the foundation of where it was going. But to be that first team and to trust that process of culture building was huge. And then it's only taken off since. We've done, I don't know, way less than X's and O's. And that was my first thought going in 2007 was like, I'm gonna have all the plays we need to win. And it's, as anybody knows, it's not that at all. So we focused heavily on culture, heavily on growing it every year. and what that means. And that's just where the foundation was laid and how it's taken off since then. But our mindset shift because of that group in 13-14.
Right, right. So then, you touched on it, how you changed from recruiting talent to recruiting people. And obviously we've talked about that. Actually, if there's one thing I think that you've influenced my career on the most, it's definitely recruiting. Like your different ideas, how I know you connect with people so well, and you recruit so well. How important is that in terms of now year 13, you finding the right fit for your beliefs and what you want your program to look like? How important is it from the recruiting standpoint?
Yeah, it's everything. But our program makes it a little bit easier because we're probably the last program in the country to put in an offense, which we usually do in week 2 of practice. It's like we're really, really intentional about making sure our offense fits who we are, which changes every year. Even when we have massive amounts of people coming back on rosters, it still changes. So even this year, coming off an NCAA tournament bid and one of the best years ever in Loras history 2 years ago, we changed it all because our team is different. So from that end, in recruiting, it takes the shift away from we need a player that looks like this and a player that looks like that and fits our system into coaches got to fit the system and find the system that works for whoever we have. That's been great for us. And I don't think we're a slow starting team either because of it. I just think we try to play to our strengths as much as we can, whatever that looks like. And we've had years where we play 3 point guards at the same time, and we've had years where we play 3 posts at the same time because that's what gave us the best shot. So we're a little bit probably outside the box on that thinking, which allows us then to shape recruiting into, we don't need this type of player. We need this type of person, and that's why we focus in recruiting a ton. But they can look any different way. And as long as we're going to get better with recruiting, doesn't matter what that looks like.
Right, right. I love that. I love it. So do you, as you've kind of tinkered with and tweaked your system, do you have like a certain checklist when it comes to even personality traits or, kind of the adversity you hope that they've gone through? Or, for instance, I was listening to something that Buzz Williams and John Gordon were talking, right? And Coach Buzz Williams talks about how he wants to see the kid he's recruiting in a tough conversation with him while their parents are around, because he wants to see if mom or dad or grandma or uncle are going to kind of influence or try to take over the coaching or kind of coddle the kid. So, that's a random comparison, but are there anything like that you hold, that you're willing to share, that you hold of importance to you when you're recruiting a kid?
Yeah. How they respond to adversity is one thing, right? And you can ask them, and but you got to ask people around them too, because they know, and rightfully so. I think you get a recruit on the phone early in the process, and they're a little bit scared, and this is how it goes, and this is what I'm supposed to say, and everybody's got the same answers until you really start to break them down, which might not be for a little bit, right?
Right.
So before you get that invested, you got to know who they are. So we've called hairstylists and pastors on like who these kids are.
Hairstylist? You're being serious? You call it hairstylist?
They know hairstylists know everything, man. You will get all sorts of gossip from hairstylists, right? That's all they do is talk.
That's right. You're right. You're right.
It's not common, but we've done it, and it's not always the cookie cutter questions too. It's like, what have these kids done and been through? How do they treat each other? How do they treat their parents, their teammates, their brothers and sisters, their coaches? Is a big one too. And what other coaches in the conference say about them and stuff like that. So before we even get on the phone with a kid, it's a process of investigation in a way, not to like check them off, but make sure they're right for us. Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, that makes sense. obviously I think like talking to guidance counselors, athletic directors, coaches, AAU coaches, yeah, you're trying to paint the picture, right? So I believe that, but I'd never heard hairstylists before. Again, you're teaching me again today, more education.
Try it out one time. Try it out.
You could imagine me sitting there asking for their hairstylist phone number, like sitting there in the conversation. All right, that's different. That's great. That's too good. What happens though? This now just out of using this as a tangent, just out of curiosity. What if there really is someone's game that you really have fallen in love with how they play, and you could see how you would use them, because you might do the least in terms of X's and O's, but I know your mind. You're still, X's and O's is still a part of who you are and what you're trying to implement. So let's say you fall in love with a kid's game, but they're on the cusp of the personality or the cultural type kid that you want. Will you opt for the kid who's way more elevated in the culture department and maybe way less in the game department if it came down to those two kids? How do you handle that controversy in your mind?
Yeah, then it's like everybody's going to bring, and I bring tons of flaws to our program. So everybody's going to bring baggage. It's just a matter of like, can the culture carry it?
Right.
Instead of vice versa, right? Because you want to take a step back because of a player, but can the culture like bring them along? And totally nobody's going to be perfect about it. And I screwed up more than anybody on our team, but can the culture carry them? So yeah, it's not like make or break. A lot of those conversations in my head do happen. Like, can our culture help them along or develop them further, or is it something that we can't overlook?
Right. Okay. That makes sense. 13 years as a head coach, so it's been a minute since, I know you're a lifelong learner and stuff like that, but it's still been a minute where you haven't necessarily had to be in a supportive role. You've been at the front of the table. You've been a leader. So what are the things that, even from your earliest days, you can remember influenced your thoughts and beliefs on your culture and the type of program you wanted to have when you were going to be given that opportunity to be a head coach?
Yeah, well, I got lucky early, as do most. It's not an uncommon story, but just how I started. April Arvin was the head coach at Lakeland in Division III, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which was near my house. And after college, I ended up getting real sick and had to kind of derail all my plans for what was coming career-wise. And long story short, she took me aboard and taught me so much in 2 years, and it was honestly a godsend of like magnifying proportions, because I had no idea. And she had MS at the time, which was really bad, and it was before all the MS treatment started to really kick in and like advance. So there'd be days of games where she'd be on IVs, and you feel bad for her, but she delegated so well and gave us awesome experiences, and like little did I know, prepared me in a huge way for what was coming. So I got totally lucky, working for free for a couple of years, but learned a ton from her. She was the best culture person I've ever been around. I mean, the way that number 19 celebrated on the team that year and she did it 1 through 19. So I learned a lot from her without even knowing, probably. And that's kind of where it all started. And then you mentioned Buzz, and I'm not tight with Buzz, but I love the guy and what he does, and like his scope of it all, and just obsession over leadership, and growing and learning. And I've taken a lot from that mindset as well.
Nice. Are there any like books that you'd point someone who maybe catches this or listens to this, that, books or something online, any learning document that you're like, hey, you got to check this out,
What I'm reading now is It's a book by John Mark Comer. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Ruthless elimination.
The best I've ever read. Yeah, the best I've ever read. And it just takes a step back on like the go culture and the badges of honor that we try to wear sometimes by working really hard, to like what's really important and what our purpose is. That's fresh for me. It's I love it. I love that perspective. That's probably one I'd recommend because it's there.
Nice. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay. I think, like you said, your time at obviously Lakeland was so crucial to how you were shaped. And you were the first person in my coaching career when we first met. One of the first few times we talked, I had asked you, when did you know you were ready to be a head coach at the college level? And you kind of said, you're never ready until you're in the seat. And that always kind of stuck with me, right? But elaborate on that, and then if you could touch on kind of how you got to be in your seat at Loras and why that's a statement that's so true for you.
Yeah, so my second year at Lakeland, April retired from coaching. She's still teaching there, and she's athletic director and doing well. But she stepped away from coaching, and everybody on her staff got a job. And I ended up at Loras as an assistant coach in July. And then in September, our head coach, Shauna Green, who's doing pretty well at Dayton right now, left for Providence. And we're 3 weeks away from starting our season, so there's not really time to hire anybody. And I remember vividly like the conversation that happened. They wanted to give me the interim job, and that night I drove to April's house in Sheboygan saying, what the heck is going on? I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And we just talked it out kind of. So I jumped in. I still tell the players from that team this to the day. Like, I wish I would have them now, because you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know so much, and I'm still learning it. But they kind of got a raw deal because I was so green with anything big picture wise. We started out really well. We went 10-0, and then they lifted the interim tag in December probably that year, and then we lost like 5 games in a row.
Did they apply the interim tag back?
Yeah. But it was a fun journey with that crew for sure. Interesting, and there's a lot of stories that come out of that. And nobody writes a book about that, right? Everybody writes a book about 1,000 wins, but that first year is just a merry-go-round of crazy. And it's hard to prepare what you're going to see until you sit in it, just because there's so many things that I didn't see that April did or had to make decisions on. So many things you have to make decisions about.
What's a big picture example that you kind of missed during year one, that if you look back, you could have done it better?
Just investing in our team more. I invested on the court a ton, and my dad taught me, or was a great example of like how hard you work and all that stuff. So that's always been the nature of mine. But like investing in the people, I was very, very probably way too technical that first year and less relational. Not probably, no question about it. So that kind of started it all. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then if you could, obviously hindsight's 2020, but I don't think 13 years, all-time winningest guy there, you probably don't change it, right? You don't change necessarily the growth that needed to take place in the way that it took place, right?
Well, I was forced to learn it, right, in order to survive probably and adapt. To change it, I wish I would have done it earlier and understood that like the payoff is worth it. But my 25-year-old mind at the time was, you got to put the ball in the hole and guard somebody on defense, and it doesn't matter. That's what matters, and that's not really what matters. So I wish I could change a little bit of it for sure, and how I handled players early on in my career. I mean, it wasn't fireable or anything like that, but
Right.
I just didn't invest as much as I should have.
Was there I mean, other than time and experience, is there one specific moment that you could reflect on? You're like, when you said that 9-10 recruiting, which eventually led to that 13-14 championship, even before then, was there one trigger that you're like, man, I gotta change my focus to lead and develop people, not lead and develop basketball players?
Yeah, it was a combination of a couple things. We had, in that recruiting class, we had what was our first All-American since I've been here, Katie Langmeyer, and then alongside of her was just a tremendous teammate and a leader in Lauren Byrne, and they taught me a ton about that part, because they invested in me and our staff a ton more than I had ever known or done. So it was kind of reciprocal in that way. Like, they taught me a ton about it, and our relationship was awesome. And you just, over the course of time, saw the fruits of that. And Katie had a much better, like, statistical basketball career. She was an All-American and one of the best players easily that I've ever coached. But Lauren had it a little bit harder and played JV for us for a couple of years and didn't see real heavy minutes until her senior year, but still invested in that process of relationships with me and our assistants. And she taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about it. So I think I learned more from them than, like, oh yeah, the light went on, moments, that kind of thing.
And then, were those two kids you had recruited or inherited?
No, they were part of that first people class.
So the
So
9,
they're
10.
Yeah, third class in.
Okay, wow, nice. Well, that's kind of
Yeah.
cool too. It wasn't necessarily something that you were still a part of recruiting them, and you kind of brought them in. So you still had without knowing that it was going to happen that way, you're responsible for how that worked, how it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
How hard has it been sorry, like you said, you made one reference, like people write about the 1,000 wins, but you don't see a lot of books on year one. How has it been trying to sustain over the course of 13 years? Like, I'm entering my 10th year as a college coach. You've been a head coach now for more than that. So how has it been trying to maintain and sustain such a high level of both performance and development for your student athletes over the course of that duration of time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think it's like, you hear this all the time too. Like, it doesn't really feel like work, and you got to love your job and all that sort of stuff. And that's, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, it's like, I don't approach it as like, here's the next challenge. I think, I told our team today, like, even with the success we've had, the price is always going to increase. Like, nobody cares what you did before, or nobody cares what last year was like. At some point, that'll turn, and like, more is required. So, like, more is required on our end to climb that ladder. And until we've arrived, like, I don't know if you'll ever arrive at that point, but until we're winning national championships every year, and I don't even know if that's the measure of, like, sustaining greatness.
Right.
I'd like to think it's just a reward for doing it, but we still haven't arrived. I think we have a lot of room to grow, and get better, and so it's just the chase, right? And that's part of being competitive, but also, like, understanding what you're chasing too. Is it all about wins? That helps, and that's fun, and but I don't think it is. And that shift mindset early on. Well, not early on, 4 or 5 years in. And it's only grown since then, has really helped develop our win-loss record more than anything, probably.
Right.
I don't know
Understanding
if
how.
that makes any sense.
I got you. I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of like
Right.
how the way you go about your business day to day and year to year, and how it becomes the winning or the records become a byproduct of the way you efficiently go about it, right? I think you've had a
Yeah,
big influence on.
you said that much better than I did. So
Yeah, well, you've had a big influence on that with me, and we've talked about that. I was lucky to meet you at 22, right? So like I've heard some of the same stuff from you. I think one of the unique things for me that I took from you, and I kind of want to jump back to it, is you're really one of my high school coaches. He would always tell me there's so much power in handwritten notes and handwritten letters. And in his office in my high school, he had a handwritten note from Bobby Knight, and he had a handwritten letter and a picture from Coach K at Duke. And so that always stuck with me. And then fast forward now, years later, I become a college coach, and then I learn from you. Like I visit you up at Loras, and we talk about some of your recruiting methods. And you as a head coach, you're still handwriting letters and notes like weekly to your kids that you're recruiting, and that's kind of something that has stuck with me. I kind of want to touch on that. What is your take on the power of the handwritten note, and how you utilize that in recruiting and relationship building? I'd love to hear that.
yeah, that's a Buzz thing, right?
Yeah,
And that's his MO from being a manager at junior college, was
right.
just hand. I don't do it near to the extent that he does, but that's where, and you said it, like people have that on the walls, and I'm not Coach K, and nobody's hanging my stuff up, but
I
it
got
is
something. I got
there's
something from you up. Yeah, you're not Coach K, but it's up in my office.
there is power to it for sure, and probably because it's not as common. So we do it. Yeah, I do a ton of it, um, and even like thank you cards or birthday cards, and you send a Christmas card every year, and like that sort of stuff goes a long way. And in remembering that, I remember every one of my players' anniversary dates for their commitments, and
That's
that's
awesome.
not to like tout but it's just something that's really important to me, in recognizing like those little moments. And some of the handwritten stuff is about that. Some of it's just motivational. And when you brought me in to speak a couple years ago at NIU with H,
Yeah.
um, I haven't talked to the guy much. I interact in social media once in a while with him, but his concept of juice is life changing. And if anybody hasn't heard of it, I am amazed at how much it's been beneficial for me and us. Because after talking to him that weekend, I took it and ran with it, and have now compiled probably 4 years of juice.
Nice.
Um, and it's been awesome for us, for me personally, professionally, and I think it's helped our team's mindset a lot too.
Right. Right. No, I love it. Oh man, that's good. He's gonna love the shout out too. He'll appreciate that. Oh man. Um, yeah, I think like you said, it's kind of uncommon. It's just how different people connect. I don't know how big has that been. You mentioned this here. I kind of want to go to that. How big has that been for you in terms of still cultivating your X's and O's mind? You still find yourself going down the rabbit hole of YouTube and DVDs and videos of X's and O's and basketball stuff, in the middle of the night when your kids go to bed, or did you do a lot of virtual clinics during this quarantine time? Like, what is your learning method now? Again, kind of tied into maintaining that 13-year product and attacking the 14th year and the 15th year. How are you still trying to grow on the basketball court?
Yeah, and this is where the origin of this started, because we changed. We said, how can we learn more basketball wise? Or I was kind of questioning myself, like, how can I stay fresh in all this? I was like, let's just change what we do every year so we stay on top of it. So that was kind of an accident,
Really?
in terms of like playing around and stuff, but it does force you to stay fresh on what's out there. what are the people doing really, really well that might fit our team. So knowing that we're going to have a brand new offense and a brand new defense next year, like it forces me to really look at different things instead of saying we're locked into what we do and this is how we do it, X's and O's. So that's been really good for growth for sure, and just finding out what else is out there. And it's so, I mean, all that stuff is so accessible.
Right, for sure. How many seasons have you been like, okay, we're going to try this new? How many years have you been doing it where it's new every year? So you've been a head
Yeah.
coach for 13 years. Are you telling me 13 different years you had 13 different defenses? Now, I've watched you a ton. You helped me implement different things, from the 1-3-1 when we were at Truman and things like that. And then obviously, I won't give it away, but, your lettered play calling system, we talked about that a ton on the offensive end. What is it? Give me the numbers here. 13 years as head coach, 13 brand new offenses. What's the math on this?
No, we've had it's probably been 6 or 7 years now where we changed everything
Wow.
every year. And yeah, and to be fair, not everything gets changed, right?
Right.
If the Packers treat us really well, or we feel like we have a good Pack team, maybe we skip a year on that. So it's not like we have 13 defenses in our pocket. It's like, hey, this is a really good Pack team, or this is a really good Buzz team, or this is a really good 1-3-1 team, or that sort of thing. And the same approach offensively, although that's been a little bit more diverse probably. So it's probably been 6 or 7 years since we started that.
Nice. I like it. So then, do you ever feel like you and I were both great friends with John Foffel at Cardinal Stretch? Do you ever
Yeah.
feel like you fall in love with too many things? That's always his thing. He's like, I got to stop going to clinics. I want to install every play that I just saw. Like, do you ever feel like you're like, well, I have a good Pack team that also happens to be a good change it up and maybe run a couple Buzz possessions team? Do you ever feel like you're falling in love with too many concepts and you want to do it all?
Not really, only because like the question we keep coming back to is it right for our team? So I think we've done probably less in the approach we've taken is less is more offensively. So we've like this year we had one main offense and that was it, and then some specials alongside. So we didn't have 4 offenses that we ran or anything like that. And then that has allowed us to do a little bit more experimentation defensively. So this year we were run and jump all the time, and then we played more Buzz than ever before and fell back into Pack at some points. But that has allowed us to do 3 things defensively pretty well, especially as we've matured and as the year went on. So if it's right for us, that's the question we always come back to, because we have a library of stuff that I like. It's just maybe not for us.
Right. Okay. I like it. Okay, a couple more things I want to get to here. I know you got other responsibilities coming up, but how do you do captains? Do you do captains on your team? How do you select captains? I'm curious. Has that changed?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's always changing with us, Adam. So we were pretty standard in the way we did things up until this year. And I don't think it was a broke system, and one would argue that our culture has never been better. But I think we can be better. So I listened to it started with a podcast by JP Nervin about how he does his captains structure. It's called Leaders Captains Council, I think he calls it.
Okay. Do you know what
which really diversifies Captains Council.
That's the name of the podcast?
Coaching Culture is the podcast.
Okay. Say that again. You kind of broke up there.
Yeah, the podcast is Coaching Culture.
Coaching Culture. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. By Nate Sanderson and JP Nervin. Which really is, I wanted more hands on deck and more diversified leadership. And I saw a quote, I don't know who did it, so I can't fully give it credit, but, our best players the last couple of years have been our captains, and which hasn't been a bad thing. But I want to let them play and worry less about leadership, and let them be really good players. Not that they're not going to have a role in leadership, but we have 10 captains, all throughout every class, that are each in charge of small subgroups. So each of our captains is called the unit leader, basically, that is in charge of 3 people. And if any of those people have an issue or want to talk, like, they have a comfort level in their small groups, sort of like a religious small group setting, right? Like, there's in small there. So we try to keep it small. And this is our first year with it, so we'll have some wrinkles and it won't be perfect, but we're changing what we've always done to this sort of thing.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Well, hey, I think that's a good place to stop right there. I think we touched a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about. Again, want to appreciate your time. I think I'm always learning from you, even if we don't catch up as often with kids and then the business of the season. But again, you've been a great influence on me, and I've always admired what you do over there and taken ideas from you. And happy. I feel terrible for how the season ended for you guys. With you practicing to play in your next national tournament game, but I have no doubt that you guys will still bring the heat from Dubuque, Iowa. So I'm happy for you. But again, thanks for your time, Jay.
Thank you. I appreciate you and everything you do here, but also our friendship as well. So thank you.
Thanks.